What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. Trade rumors surrounding the New York Mets and the early goings of this offseason are swirling, and we are here to talk about the latest report and two names that could be on the move elsewhere away from the Mets this offseason. Before we fully get into the latest report and article talking about these two candidates, make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more Mets offseason content all off season long, and comment your thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section. Yesterday, I released the video. I'll link it in the description down below as well, talking about how Mark Vientos could be included in a potential trade package for an ace like Sandy Alcantara or any other ace that is available on the trade market. And his name is also being discussed in trades, but we have two other names to talk about. And this comes directly from Tim Britton of The Athletic, covering the New York Mets since 2018. He has named Kodai Senga and Jeff McNeil as trade candidates for David Stearns to shake up this roster and potentially get younger, as we see what the Milwaukee Brewers are doing right now in the playoffs and how electric they are playing. This team needs more energy, and I think that parting ways with these two players could certainly help that cause and freeing up those roster spots. And I'll get into why here in just a second, but I really want to start off this video talking about Kodai Senga first and then transitioning back into the conversation of Jeff McNeil, because I think that Kodai Senga by far is the most obvious trade candidate for the New York Mets to free up a roster spot in this rotation moving forward into 2026, especially needing to acquire or sign in this offseason a true ace to anchor this rotation at the top for seasons to come. And that's a position that they have entrusted Kodai Senga in over the past two seasons, and he has not delivered whatsoever in that type of role. As this article states, Senga, 32 years old, is owed $28 million over the next two seasons. After a disappointing finish that led to a demotion to the minors, by the way, when the Mets needed him the most, he was demoted. His value with the Mets appears to be fading, and a trade could offer both sides a fresh start. It goes on to state his statistics all in all in 2025, and we know that this season was a tale of two tapes and a tale of two halves because he started off red hot. He was pitching like a true ace. He went down with a hamstring injury on the Pete Alonso errant throw, and he did not look the same, not nearly the same after that in the second half, which is really unfortunate. And you look at this rotation and the shape that it's in, you know, David Peterson is in an arbitration year. He's going to be here in 2026. You've got the young core, this nucleus that is presenting itself, and it presented itself in the tail end of 2025 with Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, and a name that a lot of people have forgotten because he missed all of 2025, Christian Scott, who was throwing bullpen sessions toward the end of 2025 and is gearing up to be ready in 2026. And you also have Brandon Sproat, and I'll get to Brandon Sproat in a future video. I won't necessarily derail the conversation of this video with Brandon Sproat, but I think that he's a wild card and he could also be a trade chip, spoiler alert, this offseason for the Mets if they really want to go out and get an ace, and other teams could be eyeing him as well. But Kodai Senga just has been unavailable when the Mets have needed him the most. And I think that, you know, his demotion to the minor leagues and AAA and trying to find something and figure something out with the velocity, the mechanics, whatever was ailing him, and his inability to come back from that, just not feeling right, no injury reported, he just wasn't feeling right. I think that puts the nail in the coffin for Kodai Senga as a New York Met, or at least that's how the front office should be viewing his tenure as a Met moving forward, because this team had sky high expectations. This was a rotation that David Stearns built, and he was the one that entrusted in Kodai Senga to act as an ace of this rotation, in which he failed. He simply failed. And I think that creating this roster spot, right? Opening up this roster spot that Kodai Senga currently holds is more valuable than the production that you are taking a chance on with him for the 2026 season. Not to mention that you now have a a decision to make whether you want to stick with the six-man rotation if Kodai Senga is going to be a part of this team moving forward, or whether you want to go back to a traditional five-man rotation if he is gone. And, I don't know. With the way that the six-man rotation kind of looked, it seemed like it just was off. It was off. A lot of things about this rotation were off with the injuries, the lack of performance, right? Montas, lack of performance, injury. Sean Mcneil, injury. Kodai Senga, injury, then lack of performance. David Peterson, terrible second half. A lot of these things went wrong. Griffin Canning, injury in the early goings of the season after a hot start. A lot of things went wrong. But I do think that, especially if you do acquire an ace, because that should be the number one priority for David Stearns this offseason, is getting that true ace. I think that maybe, and I wasn't necessarily, I guess, concerned with this aspect going into this 2025 season, but now I'm shifting back to the idea that I do think that a five-man rotation would probably help the cause of a lot of these other pitchers as well moving forward. And so I think that Kodai Senga, I think he has to be gone. I think that it makes complete sense for Tim Britton to be naming Kodai Senga as a trade chip. And I think that opening up that roster spot gives David Stearns a lot of options moving forward in free agency or via trade to figure things out at the top of the rotation for 2026 this offseason. So let's shift our focus here to Jeff McNeil. As this article also states, McNeil's 33 will be earning $15.75 million in 2026 with a club option for another $15.75 million in 2027. And spoiler alert, I guarantee you, even if Jeff McNeil plays out the 2026 season as a Met, that club option is being declined. After winning the National League batting title in 2022, McNeil signed an extension and hasn't been as reliable ever since. And we'll get into the production value here in the next slide. Jeff McNeil is a versatile defender, and that is the first thing that Jeff McNeil fans that are in this fan base, because there are plenty of them, will state when we try to open up this conversation about trading him. And I will say, yes, that is a factual statement. He plays second base. He can play the outfield. If you really needed him to catch, I'm sure that he would sign up to catch and play and help the team. That is how versatile Jeff McNeil is. But let's also be honest with ourselves. He is not a super defender at any one position. Second base is clearly his best position. I think he posted a 2 DRS in 2025 at second base, which is pretty damn good. I will say that. But the defensive versatility is not enough for me to outweigh the lack of production offensively over the past two seasons, and also him just getting older and the Mets having a guy like Jet Williams coming up through the ranks trying to fight for a spot and prove himself after a long-awaited, I guess, arrival. And a lot of Mets fans have been talking about Jet Williams at the major league level and finally giving him a shot. Same thing with AJ Ewing, who's in Double-A, not quite as ready, quote unquote, as Jet Williams is, but he is also on the fast track to the major leagues as well with what he's been posting in the minor leagues. And I do think that getting younger in the infield should be a priority if they intend on keeping the rest of this core together. And of course, that conversation has to surround Pete Alonso and what the Mets are going to do with Pete Alonso. So, we talked about it a couple of videos ago as well. Pete Alonso versus Alex Bregman. The fact that Brett Baty can also fill in at second base on a competent level, and he showed the ability to do so, also helps the argument of finding a trade partner for Jeff McNeil, because you also have third base options out on the open market via free agency. I talked about Alex Bregman in particular. If the Mets aren't going to go the Pete Alonso route, you can, at least for the first part of the season, shift Brett Baty over to second base, sign a guy like Alex Bregman, and boom, there's your infield. You get immensely better defensively with that scenario. So, this is going to be interesting how this plays out, because McNeil, in an ideal scenario, is a bench bat for the New York Mets in 2026. That's how good or how strong this lineup should be, that he is a bench bat. And the idea that you're paying $15.75 million for a bench bat in 2026, where you have other areas of this team that need improvement, just simply does not fly with me. And therefore, I am in the camp and the side of these two players should probably be gone because the Mets are better freeing up those roster spots to provide more flexibility and for the youth movement to kind of run its course here starting in 2026. But let's look at this production from Jeff McNeil over the past 2 seasons. 2024 was an abysmal year. You see those numbers in red. And those are the lefty righty splits that Jeff McNeil also displayed. Not great against lefties, better against righties, but no numbers on this screen are going to wow you. He doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't hit the ball over the fence. He reduced the strikeout rate and he increased the walk rate, which increased his on base percentage naturally. But this is just not the same version of Jeff McNeil that we've seen in seasons prior since he debuted in 2018 and in particular 2019 and 2022, which were both of his all-star seasons. And so given this drop off of production, I really do think that moving some money off of the books by freeing up some of that 15.75 million. I'm not saying all of that is going to come off the books because I'm sure some team is going to want the Mets, as they have historically done, to pay some of that money off of the contract, as is the case and probably would be the case if Senga gets traded. But freeing up some of that payroll space and also getting any sort of return for Jeff McNeil. A lot of people talk about and equate his value with a reliever maybe coming back to the Mets in return. That's okay and just fine with me because this team is going to need a lot of additions to this bullpen as well because let's face it, there are a lot of holes in this roster. And so I think that the value of Jeff McNeil that you're getting offensively and, even the versatility does not outweigh freeing up that roster spot and getting some value in return while also freeing up the payroll to address other needs and concerns of this team. But Mets fans, this is a fluid conversation. This is just preliminary. Also, there's nothing concrete here about the Mets openly stating they will be trying to move off of these two names. This is coming from Tim Britton of The Athletic, but I think the philosophy and the idea that Tim is trying to convey makes sense with where this team should be headed in 2026. Let me know in the comment section if you agree with this or not. Do you want to see both of these names being traded? Would you keep one over the other? Let me know. Hit the thumbs up buttons. And as always, subscribe for more Mets content. Let's go Mets.